the guy that was on the rise, the guy that was a humble guy, the guy that chased down the two muggers that, or the mugger that took the old couple's money, you know, hours before his title fight against Shogun, a fight in which he destroyed Shogun. That's the John Jones I'm gonna have to try and remember, I guess.
You're listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
All right, Mike. I guess we're done with fight week, and you are back from Vegas. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, but my voice is still kind of messed up from yelling about the Eddie Alvarez fight. I was there live. We're going to talk about that a little later, I know, but it was really crazy to see live. I'll tell you that.
I bet. It was crazy to see at home, I tell you that much. I was not expecting that outcome.
Oh, no, I don't think anybody was. If anybody was to get it done that way, I guess it would have been him. But nobody did. Yeah. And I was at the fan convention as well. So if you guys have seen Facebook already, you've seen some of the pictures up there. And I just put all the pictures in the album type thing on Facebook. Yeah. So it looks a lot clearer now. It's not a picture from my iPhone of my wife's camera picture. So anyway, it's more clean now, and we'll talk about that later too.
Definitely. We'll talk about all that stuff. But first I want to get into, I know we said we were going to talk about any news items, but we have to talk about this because a couple of things went down. Number one, the UFC has sold for $4 billion, Mike. What do you have to say about that? I mean, that's crazy to me.
A couple of things that came to my mind. Number one, when you also called me or texted me when Strikeforce was bought out by the UFC, you were quicker on that than I was. And then now I'm driving home, and you texted me about the UFC being sold, and that was something that the rumors were kind of around for a while, so I didn't take too much stock into it because you just never know.
Me neither.
Not saying that it wasn't going to happen, but I just was going to let it go. And I'm happy that Dana White is staying on currently as the face of the company and doing his Dana White thing. But I'm really interested to see what happens. I liked the way it was before. Jay, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Dana White and the Fertittas didn't have some problems. That's certainly going to happen in every type of company. Yeah. But I was happy how things were going, and let's see if it gets better.
Yeah. A couple of things you can take from this, or at least I do anyway. I have some theories on what might happen, and I want to present them to you, and you can tell me if I'm just full of crap or what. Okay. So they sold for $4 billion. They turned essentially $2 million into $4 billion. And that's just amazing right there, what they've done. They're keeping Dana White as the president, which is awesome. I'm all for it. Like you said, he had some issues with the Fertitta brothers. And I mean, not real big issues, but sometimes they would butt heads, so to speak, right?
Every so often, yeah.
Okay. Now, do you think that this group that bought him out, Williams Morris Endeavor, WMEIMG, this company, along with, I heard there was many investors involved with this purchase. Do you think that basically they're going to let Dana White have more control?
See, that's the question. I think from the beginning right now, they're going to have it go as normal. But because Zuffa was comprised of Dana White and the Fertitta brothers, who they were all friends. These were guys that they could get together and talk amongst each other and make decisions. Now we've got owners who are basically, what I can tell, is Dana White's boss. And these guys are going to want to make a profit. They didn't go from the UFC not making any money when Zuffa bought it to them now, having the Ultimate Fighter and Ultimate Fighter 1 finale, and then breaking mainstream and finally making money. These guys have an investment, and they want to make money. So I don't know how much they're going to be patient with how things go if they lose some money here or whatever.
Gotcha.
Now, you brought up a good point also, because let's think about it. The whole thing with Conor McGregor. Do I think that this group here would have let it go as far as it did? I don't think so. I don't
Yeah,
think so because
yeah.
they know he makes money for the company.
Well, interesting you bring that up because that's part of what else I've been thinking about now. Do you think the Fertitta brothers got out? And this is something that popped into my mind as soon as I heard the news. Do you think they got out because they felt that they're going to get no bigger than where they were at in 2015 because of Ronda Rousey, because of Conor McGregor, because of these big stars, and they essentially lost these stars? Do you think they got out because of that?
Yeah, that's what I wrote on Facebook and texted a couple of people. Is basically is that you've got these stars that have gone by the wayside. Ronda Rousey, I don't think she's ever coming back. Jay, I'm
Nope.
pretty sure you don't think she's coming back.
Which,
And then
by the way, Mike, I did call that last year on our podcast. By the way,
yeah, he did. I think I wanted to see how far it would take, but you jumped the gun early and it paid off. I really don't think she's coming back.
Yeah.
And then the big thing for me though was Conor McGregor and his holdout.
Yes.
Is the fact that I think they said, okay, look, we're making a lot of money. I don't want to deal with all this stuff, so why don't we just go ahead and sell it? And now they've all made money, and Dana White gets to do what? What does he get to do? The same exact thing after getting paid, and he still has a share. So you've
Yes.
got they're not going to get any bigger. The headache is, at least for the Fertittas, the headache is gone because they bought the company for $2 million back in, gosh, I don't know, 2002, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, 2002, and it didn't make it big until 2005. They didn't start making money though till 2006
Yeah.
or 7. So yeah, I think that's why they sold it. But I would like to think that they sold it also to a group that wants to take it farther, and I know that Dana White believes that.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, this is a talent agency, essentially, who they sold it to. And they actually, there's a conflict of interest here because they do represent some of the UFC stars like Chris Weidman. They represent Ronda Rousey, which is crazy. But I don't know how that'll factor into all this. But
I'll tell you what, it'll be fine, and I'll tell you why, Jay. Because when Chuck Liddell was still fighting in the beginning, Dana White was not his coach, but was like his manager.
Okay.
And you know what, Dana White did well, and Chuck Liddell did well, and there was some butting heads with Tito Ortiz, but Tito Ortiz is kind of a numbskull in my opinion. Have you ever heard him, on interviews and
Yeah.
stuff like that? Great fighter for his time, but if you guys know the whole thing with Chuck and Tito and Dana, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and basically, I don't want people to get it twisted, Mike. You and I both agree that they've probably sold because less headache, and they've pretty much lost some of their stars, essentially all their stars last year in 2015, the very marketable ones anyway. And look what just happened to John Jones, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I think that was their last real star that they were hanging on to. And but make no mistake about it, I still think that the UFC, there is still room for growth, of course. And I'm not saying that they won't have any other stars in the future. I'm just saying that right now the Fertitta brothers saw an opportunity and they got out. That's all.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. Look, they still have station casinos, all that stuff going on. They're going to do fine. They had a great ride on this, and I think Dana White, who I assume doesn't own part of the casinos, would still love to do what he's doing right now, as it looks like he does love what he's doing right now, by being the face of the UFC and kind of managing it, basically. So we'll see.
Yeah.
John Jones coming back. Jay, I don't remember if I was talking to you or if it was somebody else, but we had Brock Lesnar come back, and then John Jones was going to be fighting.
Yes.
And then Conor McGregor is coming back. If Ronda Rousey was to come back, and GSP was talking about coming back, man, if they had all those guys at the same time, this
Wow.
company
Yeah.
would just be unbeatable.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole Ronda Rousey thing, I don't think she's coming back. I mean, she could very well come back at some point, but I just doubt it. I really do. But
Yeah.
as far as the UFC being sold, the one thing that I'm hoping won't happen, which I think is going to happen, is Joe Rogan will probably retire. And that makes me sad because I think he is the voice of the UFC. When I think UFC, I think Joe Rogan commentating. That's
Yeah.
the first thing that comes to my mind after the fights, of course. But he's the guy that pumps you up while you're watching the fights.
For me, if you guys watch football, you guys watch Sunday Night Football. He's the Al Michaels, basically, for me. He's been a part of the sport I love, football as well. Al Michaels has been doing Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football. He's been there calling the big games. I mean, a lot of the quotes you hear, a lot of the sound bites you hear
Yep.
are of Al Michaels. Joe Rogan is that for the UFC.
Yeah,
He's,
definitely.
again, because football is my really only other sport I follow. He's kind of like John Madden was for me. I'm 40 years old. John Madden in the late 80s, early 90s, when the 49ers were really great, he covered all their games.
Yep.
When I think football, I think those two guys. Joe Rogan is that guy. And I'm really hoping that if he does retire, because I know he has talked about it, that maybe he comes back for the big cards, maybe like the July 4th cards and the New Year's cards,
Yeah.
not New Year's, I'm sorry, Super Bowl card, maybe something like that. But he will be sorely missed, and that's not to put down guys like Kenny Florian or Brian Stan or John Anik, who I like, by the way, but they're just not the same.
Yeah, they've got some huge shoes to fill, so to speak. As far as Joe Rogan, though, for people that don't know, his contract is up with the UFC in August. And once it's up, he had just mentioned a month ago that he is 100% certain if this company sells, he will leave after his, contract is up. And that's why I bring that up. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in August.
Do you know if it's through August or August 1st? Because we got to remember,
I'm not sure.
The Conor McGregor Nate Diaz fight is August 20th. And
Yeah.
if he's not calling that, that's going to be quite sad. So
Yeah, and it seems like that would be the fight he would want to call, especially.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and move on from that, Mike, and get into, well, something that happened just 2 days prior to the UFC 200 show, and that was, of course, John Jones. Tell us what happened to John Jones, Mike.
yeah, just to put you in a perspective of where I was, I'm driving down I-5 in California on the way to the fan convention and everything. And, well, it's just fields as you drive. And so you lose service. You lose service for your phone and, all that kind of stuff, internet, just calling everything. So I get a text later on from my buddy Corey, who I work with, saying, what's up with John Jones? And I'd like to know more, but I just hit a pocket where I could get service. And for the next, about 15 minutes, I couldn't tell anything. Well, finally I get the service. I look it up. I cuss out loud, really loud. My wife looks at me. I text Corey back because John Jones has been popped for a PED of some sort. 2 days before the fight, I'm going to the fight week. I'm going to see these guys and all that stuff like that. Jay, I don't know what you want me to say not say, but discuss this, but
Well.
I'm done with John Jones.
Yeah.
What the guy that was on the rise, the guy that was a humble guy, the guy that chased down the two muggers the mugger that took the old couple's money, hours before his title fight against Shogun, a fight in which he destroyed Shogun. That's the John Jones I'm going to have to try and remember, I guess, because I don't think he's coming back. And if he's coming back, it's not going to be good. It's probably going to be 2 years. And I don't know if I need to forgive him because I don't really know him. And he's just a fighter. He was a good dude before. Maybe he is now and just going through problems. I don't know. But I'm through with John Jones.
Yeah, I feel the same. John Jones, look, if he's not done with the sport, if he does come back, like you said, it'll probably be a 2-year ban. And when he does come back, will he be the same fighter? Has he been on roids in the past? We don't know these things. All I can think back to is when he was out after he got in trouble with the law just recently with the hit and run. Seeing pictures.
Which hit and run? No, I guess there's only one, but he's been in a few fender benders. Sorry.
Yeah. But the hit and run with the pregnant lady.
Yeah.
After that had happened, I remember a couple of months later, seeing pictures of him, and he looked jacked. He was like muscled out. And we were thinking, wow, he's really taking it serious. He's lifting a lot of weights. Well, was he doing something else? As, these tests are reflecting now. Apparently, Mike, it has come out that he has taken estrogen blockers. At first, he was interviewed by USADA, and they asked him if he had taken anything different. At first, he said no, Mike. And then he said, no, I remember I did start taking some new supplements. Well, as soon as he said that and that came out, that supplement company totally dropped him and said, we have nothing to do with this, and we will send you tests and show you that we don't have estrogen blockers in our supplements. So he's been caught in two lies.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that it was Rashad Evans that brought it up. And I don't mean that because they were rivals or whatever, or they were friends and they're not friends anymore. But Rashad Evans is the one that claims it, that he heard it from their camp.
Yeah.
So I just don't know, man. He doesn't look like a guy. Really, his legs, his physique, he's a fit guy, but he doesn't look like Alistair Overeem. He doesn't look like a lot of these other guys, these big giant guys that are just humongous. Your Brock Lesnar's. I mean. So I don't see why we would have to do that. But you know what, man? When you're gone for a while, maybe you want to try and get back, quicker. I'm not part of this sport. We just cover it and talk about it and love it. But why he would do that is beyond me. The tainted supplement thing is getting old by a mile.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm tired. We've talked about that at length before. Tired of hearing fighters or pro athletes say they didn't know what was in their supplements. You know what? You have to know. That is your job. That is part of your job. That's part of your coach's job to know what's in your supplements. It's all a part of it. And I'll say it straight up. I think he's lying. He's been caught in two lies already. I think he was on something that was an enhancement, obviously, a PED that was banned. He was caught. And I don't think he's necessarily totally done with the sport, Mike. But even if he comes back, he's already lost a lot of fans, including myself, a lot of people. How much more can we embrace him again, or take? How many more times can we take him back? It's
Right.
getting old.
Well, let me add something to this too. Well, first of all, I don't remember if it was on one of the post-fight shows or if it was something I was watching or listening to at the convention, but I believe it was Brian Stan. It might not be Brian Stan, but a former fighter that said, look, I never use supplements. Supplements are for guys that don't have time to eat right and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Protein shakes, things like that. And that really opened up the door for me to think, okay, if this fighter was at a top level and didn't have to take supplements. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't take supplements. If it's legal, do it, whatever. But I've always thought that you don't need to, I'm not saying you got to be Rocky Balboa and drop back, 12 raw eggs, but there's got to be something better than just that. And I say this because the tainted supplement thing has become a big thing now. The big question I have, though, and this has nothing to do now with the supplements, but does have to do with John Jones and Daniel Cormier. For a lot of guys out there, yeah, Daniel Cormier was the champ, but John Jones never really lost his belt. It was stripped. For me now, I consider Daniel Cormier the champ. I do. Technically, he was already the champ, but whether it's by the letter of the law or the spirit of the law, I think that that Daniel Cormier is now the champ, and they have to move on with this division. If John Jones comes back and fights, I don't consider him the champ.
No.
I don't consider any of that stuff. And I think this is something that I don't know, guys out there. Listen, if you haven't seen the UFC 200 embedded episode 5, I believe it could have been 4, but I believe it's 5. And it shows Dana White giving the news to Daniel Cormier about John Jones getting popped. And it is so heartbreaking and crushing to see what Daniel Cormier had to go through after he deals with all this stuff, trying to get back this loss, trying to become the undisputed champ. Well, you know what, champ? You're the champ.
Yeah, he's the undisputed champ as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
John Jones has tainted his legacy. I really believe that. I think that, now everything he's done is tarnished. And moreover, Mike, he ruined UFC 200. The more I think about it, he ruined that card. That card could have been something special, and he ruined it.
I think that the UFC did a good job of making do with what they had within the time period. But I agree, we were so ready for that fight. That fight was bigger to me than Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz too.
Yeah,
at least for me it was.
Yeah, for me too.
So this had valid. This had a valid fight. It was for the belt. It was the actual weight class. It wasn't at 170 with a featherweight and a lightweight. So yeah, I agree. Jay, you want to move on to
and let's go ahead and get into UFC 200, Mike. and talk about the fights that did take place that night, Mike. Let's go ahead. Let's get into the first fight.
Yeah, kicking off the preliminary card, and to me, the preliminaries fights, the prelims were better than the main card. Jim Miller just destroyed Takano Origomi round one. TKO punches, looking for the choke, but just pounded him out. Jim Miller is still alive. Takano Origomi is going the way of a lot of Pride veterans.
Yeah. We didn't know what kind of Jim Miller we would see that night. Obviously, we saw a good Jim Miller and just not a very good Gomi.
Yeah. So Jim Miller is still alive. He's still kicking. Still going to be on those fight night cards. Next time we see Takanori Gomi, I don't know when it's going to be. Maybe in the Philippines card. It could be. Who knows? 2 fight cards from now, wherever the next fight card is. He's still a big name, but he's getting close to leaving. Then we had Gegard Mousasi defeating Thiago Marreta Santos. Man, one of the craziest punches I've seen. His round one knockout. Santos was getting up and uppercut by Mousasi at the same time, laid him out. And, it wasn't a one-punch knockout, but Mousasi finished it. Look, Mousasi was supposed to win this fight for sure, even though Santos was a decent guy, had a 4-fight win streak. But I didn't think it was going to go like that.
No, me neither. But it looked like one of those cartoon punches, the way he fell and everything. It was pretty great. If you guys haven't watched that, go ahead and look it up. It's all over everywhere, YouTube, you name it.
Yeah. Final fight pass card for the prelims. Joe Lozon versus Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez has never been finished like that. Basically what happened was round one TKO. Joe Lozon just took a Diego Sanchez, Jay. I don't know what else I can say. They stopped it while Sanchez was still standing, but he was out on his feet. It was a mercy stoppage.
Yeah, it was.
Before you comment, Jay, I don't like those types of stoppages. Sometimes they're fine, sometimes they're not. But I guess this one was okay because look, Diego Sanchez has been in the game for a long time. He's had a lot of wars. Do you understand what I'm saying though? Like it's like let these guys fall or tap out. But Diego Sanchez, he's been through so many wars. I don't want him to get hurt anymore.
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, when you're a human punching bag, it's time to stop the fight, and that's what it looked like with Diego that night. But yeah, so there's some fights that I see that get stopped that way that I'm like, why did you stop it right now? It's not over. But that one, it was clearly going to be just a really bad time for Diego if it wasn't stopped. So
the worst one I ever saw was Bellator with Pat Curran just nailing Joe Warren. That was bad. That was a good stop. That was actually too long. I was calling it to stop it before he was falling because it was so bad. But look, if these guys don't complain, I'm fine with it, I guess,
Yeah. And that's the way you got to look at it. He wasn't complaining at all. Diego knew he was losing, and he lost that fight. So, I mean, there was no complaints there. So, what we also had Sage Northcutt open up the preliminary card on FS1, and he was fighting Enrique Marin, Mike. Man, I wasn't expecting it to go to a decision, Mike. I seriously thought that this was going to be finished early by Northcutt, or at least by the second round, or even the beginning of third, but not decision. What was your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts were, first of all, when I found out Enrique Marin was one of the winners for TUF Latin America, I thought to myself, that's a good matchup for Sage because he still has less than 10 fights. And Marin is a solid guy, obviously, just by virtue of winning that show. At least for where Sage Northcutt is currently. I wasn't sure if Northcutt lost that fight, but they counted the elbows, it looks like, against when he was against the cage as more damage. Sage still looks great on the feet, man. The jab is kicking, the jab is going and the kick's coming. He looks great. He still needs, and Jay, you've brought this up before, he still needs to work on his ground game. There's no doubt about that. But he was still able to take the back a little bit and get out of some some danger.
You could tell he's working on it. You could tell he's definitely been working on it.
Yeah.
He just needs a lot more time.
One other thing I can't really fault him too much for, because a lot of fighters do this as well. So this is just, I guess, the fight mentality is a couple times I would have liked him to stand up out of the guard and take the fight where he's better at, which is standing up. And he continued to kind of roll grapple with him. But hey, he got the win. It was a close win, and good for him. I just want to backtrack real quick too, Jay. I don't know where Miller goes from here. I think the steady road that he's been taking. Gegard Mousasi, it's really tough for him to see where he goes from here because, it was a fill-in fight, but he's got at least 2 or 3 in a row now. Lozon still, really, they're on the preliminary fight pass part because they're just, they're not going to go for a belt, but they're still fan favorites. They can still put it together in the cage. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, you got two out of the three guys that are deep into their careers, real deep, and Musasi's deep into his career too, I guess.
Right.
But
He's just
definitely,
competitive.
yeah, I think Gegard is the one that has the most chance of actually making something of it at this point. I think that he could probably go a lot further than Joe Lozon or Jim Miller at this point. That said, I don't see him getting a shot at the title yet. I think that he's got to wait for that. And it might be a long time for that now because, of course, they keep pushing people back in that division.
Well, based off of Dan Henderson getting a title shot, I think
exactly.
Musasi should have one.
And that's that.
We'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to when I'm saying they keep pushing, fighters back in that division. It's kind of upsetting to me, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, I think he's the only one out of the three there that has any kind of chance.
Yeah, I thought Lozon looked good. I know that Diego Sanchez is an older guy, but I thought he looked good with his hands. And for Sage Northcutt, where does he go from here? They just keep giving him guys like this. I think it's really, if they're gonna push a guy like this, they're gonna make him kind of one of the faces of the promotion. And I understand why they're doing it. They're gonna have to continue to give him winnable fights, and I think the Enrique Marin fight was a perfect fight, not because it was an easy fight. Because look, they could have given him just a stand-up guy that wasn't very well-rounded, but Marin is. So keep going on stage on this. Once he reaches that 12, 13 win, then you've got to start moving him up to top 15, top 20 guys.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, man. What else do we have, Mike? We had TJ Dillashaw, Rafael Assunção. Two, that's right. And that was a pretty decent fight. And I thought, honestly, that Assunção actually did better than I thought he would in this fight.
Yeah, Jay, I agree with you. I didn't think that Dillashaw was going to put him away because, as I said on the last podcast, Dillashaw really hasn't put anybody away except for, in the fifth round. And this was going, at least lately, and this is going only a three-round fight. But he did kind of have his way with them. Assunção landed a few good shots, but look, it was 30-27 across the board. And, when I was watching it in the casino, and I had to make sure I got over in time to the New York casino to watch UFC, to watch the main card. So I left right then to knowing that he probably won, and sure enough, he did. I don't know what to say, Jay, except for do you give him the title shot now? Cody Garbrandt, obviously another win or two away. Cruz is the champ. Demetrius Johnson still not going to be going there anytime soon. Faber, by the way, Faber just got another fight. He's going to fight Jimmy Rivera. I'm not too familiar with that guy, but he's fighting him at 203. Not that he should fight for the title again, but I'm just bringing up the names. Sterling lost. Brian Caraway, Jay, he won.
Oh,
but I think it's got to be Dillashaw now for Cruz, right?
Well, if you look at who they've fought, who each person has fought, who has won, who has lost, yeah, it's got to be TJ. But do I want to see that fight again? No, I don't.
I'd like to see it again. I just don't like to see these fights quick.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not that I don't ever want to see the fight again. I just don't like how we're seeing the same fights over and over so fast. It's irritating. And we're going to talk about this later, but I have a feeling we're going to start seeing more of this in the UFC in the different divisions.
Yeah, but let me follow up too and say that the fight between Dillashaw and Cruz is controversial. I really didn't know who won that fight. I think I went with Cruz, but it was really a toss-up, and a lot of guys picked Dillashaw. Did you pick Dillashaw or did you pick Cruz?
No, it was Cruz. Cruz won that fight.
Okay.
To me, yes, it was close, but it was hands down Cruz, if that makes any sense.
Well, and that's why I bring up that they may actually have him fight again because it was so close. They haven't had to do this in the UFC for a long time because the UFC has grown so much. But back in the day, man, look, I mean, Randy Couture lost the title. He won a fight, and he fought Chuck Liddell again. That was because there wasn't a lot of guys deep in the rosters then.
Yeah.
Now we have a deep roster, but
we have hundreds of guys now.
Yeah, and who do you give them? That's on a winning streak outside of Caraway, and nobody wants to see that fight.
No. But You know, if Caraway wins another fight, how can you deny him?
Oh yeah, no, look. Personally, I think he should get the next title shot by virtue of what you just said.
Yeah.
But only because T.J. Dillashaw had such a close fight and people would rather see that fight, I'm fine with that.
And
But-
also, don't get it twisted, people. I am not a Caraway fan at all.
Right.
But I'm just saying, what's right is right.
right,
And if he wins another fight with a top 5 guy, what can you say? Nothing.
yeah.
You know? But TJ, yeah, I'm in agreement. I think he is next in line. So that'll probably be
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah, he looked good. Someone who looked fantastic was Kelvin Gastelum. And Jay, you picked that right on the nose. He defeated Johnny Hendricks, 29-28, 30-27,
Yes.
30-27. That fight showed that Johnny Hendricks is really falling off.
Yep.
It also shows that Kelvin Gastelum is really coming on strong. If he can continue to get that weight cut, fine. If he can continue to train the way he's training, the way he's looking, I agree with you. I think he has a really good shot at welterweight.
Yeah, I think Kevin Gastelum, what I said on the podcast last time was both of these guys had something to prove this time, but I think Kelvin was going to be the one that's going to really show up because we didn't know where the mindset of Johnny Hendricks was going to be. And obviously, his mindset was not there that night either. Johnny Hendricks looked terrible again. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what's going on with Johnny Hendricks, Mike, but he does not look like the same Johnny Hendricks we've seen in the octagon before.
He looks surprised that he's getting punched. And I understood that with the Wonder Boy fight because Wonder Boy's unorthodox,
yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're getting combinations on Hendricks the whole day or the whole night on from Gastelum, and he's like looking like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, it's sad because, you know, I've got to look up Johnny Hendricks. And look, guys out there, you might be telling me already that he's been fighting for 10 years. I don't remember. But, you know, when these guys get to close to the 10-year mark, you know, they start to lose some steam. But even more so, gosh, I don't remember if I talked about this or not, but he's had 2 brutal fights with Robbie Lawler, and he got whooped on by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's really, we talk about it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. The mileage over the last 4 fights have been bad for him.
Yeah, we will not see a Johnny Hendricks fighting for the belt ever again. I don't think.
I don't think so either. I think he's gonna be in that fight. Not fight pass, excuse me. It's gonna be the FS1 prelims, the fight night cards. Excuse me, guys. The fight night cards. That's where he's gonna be at right now.
Yeah, Kelvin Gastelum, though, take nothing away from that boy. That man is gonna be a force to be reckoned with in that division. I think that he showed it that night. The guy's always shown that he is a fighter. He comes to fight, and he displayed that night. So I think that guy is he's on an upward swing.
Well, here's one of the other news things that's come out besides the Uriah Faber. Dong Hyun Kim is out of his fight with Neil Magny at UFC 202.
Oh,
I'd love to see Kelvin Gastelum step in and fight Neil Magny because those guys would put on a great show.
Yep.
I don't think Gastelum is hurt at all.
No, I don't think so
That would be
either.
fantastic.
Yeah, that would be an awesome fight. Good call.
And just the last thing I have, just to really quickly with news, was, and it came out a couple of days ago, but Mighty Mouse, of course, is hurt. If you guys haven't heard that, he's out of his fight with Wilson Hayes at UFC 201.
That
so
sucks.
we're not sure what's happening with him later.
Yeah, that really sucks.
Yeah, it did.
I'm bummed over that. But, yeah, moving on from that, Mike, we had Juliana Pena, Kat Zingano, which was a great fight, by the way, especially for Pena that night, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. You know, I was worried for Pena, especially in the first round, because it looked like Kat Zingano. She's already bigger, and she's kind of looks like she's bullying her around. So I thought to myself, okay, she's been undefeated in the UFC, Juliana Pena, that is. You know, she had a harder fight, her last fight. Maybe this is where she kind of like, not plateaus for her career, but she's going to take that first solid loss. She's fighting the previous #1 contender, but no, she turned it around. She won rounds 2 and 3, took Kat's back in both of the rounds, won at 29-28 across the board. And Juliana Pena is the next fight, going to fight for the title next. I got to believe it, unless Ronda Rousey comes out of nowhere and to fight. Jay, what did you think of the fight? Am I right about Pena?
Okay, if Pena, I think maybe one more fight before she fights for the belt. I'm not sure about if I would put her in there right now, but thinking about it, who else would be up for the belt right now?
That's
You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
it's one of those things where, and here's the thing too. Juliana Pena beat Kat Zingano. Kat Zingano is one of the few fighters that have already beaten Amanda Nunes.
And Misha Tate.
Yep. So there you go. Yeah, Pena might be the next one, and she might beat Amanda Nunes.
Yep.
And we'll get into some more talk about Amanda later, but yeah, that's and I definitely think this fight was very good. Pena just looked outstanding in the second and third rounds. She made Kat kind of look bad.
Yeah, and what I
and
love
that's
about
hard to
Pena,
do. Kat is a great fighter.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now she was coming off kind of a long layoff, but still, it's still a number one contender. Someone who's been training, even though she hasn't been fighting over the last year. Something I want to discuss about Pena, it's just her demeanor. It's something that I don't see. You don't see in a lot of fighters, really, but at least for me. But it's the only time I see it in the women fighters is with Juliana Pena. She looks so ready to go and so just, I don't know, like a pit bull.
Okay.
With
the exception of Ronda Rousey, I think Ronda Rousey has that same demeanor.
Excuse me, Jay. You are correct. Exactly, you're correct. But she's on her own other level. And I think that's probably why it went out of my head. And her fights they end so quickly. Yeah. But with Juliana Pena, her fights are going longer, and she is just the stick-to-itiveness of what she wants to do is just, and the way her face looks and the way she acts, it's just amazing. And then when the fight's over, not when the fight's over, but when she's doing the post-fight press conference, she's a completely different person.
Yeah, it's almost like she's the Diego Sanchez of the female division, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah. But moving on from that, Mike, we had Cain Velasquez versus Travis Brown.
Yeah, poor Travis Brown.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Well, you and I both knew that Cain Velasquez was going to run through Brown. But
this was the only fight that really wasn't competitive. Going and looking at the top card. Well, Cormier Silva as well, I guess. But when we had the main card before all the shenanigans with John Jones and stuff, this was the only main card fight where I think everybody for sure picked one fighter over the other.
Oh, definitely. And if you didn't, then you're just being ignorant because Travis Brown was going to lose this fight. Cain Velasquez, I'll tell you what surprised me most about Cain Velasquez in this fight, though. I forgot how much cardio and how fast, even though this ended in the first round, mind you, he still showed that dominant cardio with all those, with how fast he was moving, those wheel kicks. Like a guy that big throwing wheel kicks, Mike, and throwing them perfectly was just insane to watch. Now, Chris Weidman, that's how you throw a wheel kick right there. That's how you do it, Chris.
Mess with my boy Chris, but I hear you.
Yeah, but I was so impressed with how Cain looked that night.
Yeah, that's Cain 2.0. He never used to do those kicks before. And he even talked about how he had been working on them. But yeah, it's people, they talk about cardio a lot, about lasting longer in fights, getting to the fifth round and all that stuff like that. But to me, it kind of goes along with what you're saying, which is he was relentless. It wasn't I'm going to throw a couple of punches and walk around for 30 seconds. Yep. I'll throw a couple of punches. Oh, you're not going to throw back? Well, then I'm going to get back on my horse, and I'm going to come at you again. And that's what he did. And Brown was not ready for it.
Oh, and these big guys, they gas out in the first round a lot. We see it time and time again. Cain was throwing stuff left and right, wheel kicks here and there, and he was still moving like he was ready for 5 rounds. It was nuts. Travis Brown had no shot in this fight.
Yeah, he was certainly fighting above his weight class, so to speak, because obviously they're the same weight class. But really, it's where does Cain go from here? I don't like that they're always giving Cain Velasquez easy fights to get him to a title. And look, Cain Velasquez is fantastic. I think he's a great fighter.
I say he fights for the belt.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Yeah. Does he fight for the belt? Because after Overeem Miocic, I don't see, with Hunt losing, we'll of course talk about that. I don't see anybody who fights for the belt who's a decent guy who's beaten anybody on a streak. Do you? Because I don't.
No, it's Cain. Cain is up for the belt. I know we talked about this on the phone just the other day about, I was trying to bring up certain things about Brock Lesnar, but you set me straight on this situation, and it made total sense. Cain Velasquez is next for that title shot, and that's where you got to go. Hunt was the one that was probably next in line, and he got beat.
Yeah.
So you have to go Kane.
I think so too, and we'll see if it's going to be Miocic or Overeem soon enough. The fight that was kind of a letdown to me for the most part was the next fight, Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar. And what I mean by that is I expected more back and forth. Jose Aldo won this fight, a couple of 49-46 scorecards, which was amazing. He beat Jose Aldo from beginning to end. It was nothing like their first fight where Edgar came on in the second. I'm sorry, on the final 2 rounds. I expected the best Frankie Edgar fighting Jose Aldo, who would be, who'd be ferocious and ready to fight based off of his knockout from Conor McGregor. But this Jose Aldo that came, even though he didn't finish Frankie Edgar, and I think he could have fought better if he wanted to. I think he fought a little safe. He made Frankie Edgar look a little silly, and Frankie Edgar isn't made silly looking very often.
Yeah. Jose Aldo definitely came in with the mindset that he was going to win this fight no matter what. Yes, he played it safe at times, but you know what? There was times where he was very ferocious and just destroyed Frankie on the feet, which we don't see all too often. His ducks under Frankie's punches, and he did several things that, well, quite frankly, Mike, he was faster than Frankie Edgar that night.
Yeah, it wasn't just stopping the takedowns. It was throwing Edgar off of him from the takedown attempt. I mean, just throwing him to the ground.
Yeah. It looked like a little kid, trying to fight a big kid. But Jose Aldo, I think that, him winning this fight, that was the biggest letdown for me. I wanted to see Frankie Edgar win this fight because I wanted Frankie to have the belt. And then, of course, Conor to have to come in and fight Frankie Edgar. That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, me too.
But aside from that, I was not let down by this fight. I was very involved in watching this fight. I was very happy with how it was, the back and forth was. I just felt that Frankie Edgar, I think, is starting to slow down, Mike. I think he's starting to slow.
It's possible. One of the things, not to be too argumentative, but I just want to clear a little bit what I meant, is I was expecting at least somebody to be hurt. And I realized that Frankie Edgar probably was a lot more hurt than I thought. But it just seemed like an accelerated sparring match. There wasn't anything on the ground. And
Gotcha.
Of course, Jose Aldo, when you fight him, you have to take him to the ground or he's going to stand all day. That's what makes him a great fighter. He's going to fight to his strengths. But we're going to have these types of fights. I say to people all the time, this is me talking to myself.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have these types of fights. And Jose Aldo was just phenomenal in that fight. He took almost no damage. But where does Frankie Edgar go from here? Does he drop down again to 135? He says he can make 135. But how far is he going to go, man? He's in Joseph Benavidez, Chad Mendez territory. He's in, John Dodson territory. Where does he go?
Honestly, I think he would do better at 135 at this point. But that said, how many more years does he have for his, in his career? I mean, and he's not that old, but he's got a lot of mileage, and we talk about that a lot. But he does. He has a lot of mileage. The guy's been fighting. He's got 6 hours of octagon time. He's got the most octagon time than any fighder ever.
Yeah. And think about the beatings he had with even though he won some of the fights and went to draws, but with Gray Maynard and things of that nature. But let's I'm not going to feel too bad for Frankie Edgar because he was the lightweight champ. It's not like he's a guy trying to get the belt like Mendez is and Benavidez and some of these guys. Even Uriah Faber to an extent, even though he was the champ in the WEC before the UFC had their weight classes. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting with Edgar. I just want to see him fight good guys because Edgar's a great fighter. And Jose Aldo will fight Conor McGregor. That's what Dana White said. And it looks like it's going to be, even though it's not official, it's going to be they're going to fight after McGregor fights Diaz.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And you know what? To speak about that fight real quick, I think McGregor will beat Aldo again. I really do.
I will tell you this, Jay. It's going to be closer than I thought the first time after seeing what Aldo looked like this time.
Well, he's being more cautious, but if that left hook lands on his chin again, he's out.
Yeah. I'm still picking Conor to win that fight, but I just think that Jose Aldo looks even better. But we'll certainly see.
Yeah.
So what about Daniel Cormier versus Anderson Silva? Last minute, 2 days notice, Anderson Silva comes in for John Jones, and Cormier didn't have to take this fight, but man, he wanted to fight. He was happy to have the fight. It went the way pretty much most everybody thought. I was hoping that Anderson Silva, with his reach, he had like 12 inches of reach, I think is what it was. And actually, that might have been Brock Lesnar. I'm not sure. But one of them had a really long reach. Silva's got he has reach. He's taller. He's kind of bigger. I thought he might be able to get it done. He wasn't able to get it done, although near the end of the third round, he did hurt Cormier, swarmed him, but Cormier's a champ for a reason. Grabbed him, held on to him, got him to the cage, and survived and won a 30-26 across the board.
Yeah, what this comes down to, Mike, is I think that Anderson Silva is not the same Anderson Silva that we once knew many years ago. And on top of that, you have Chris Weidman that really messed him up. I think Chris Weidman really messed him up because he doesn't pull the trigger anymore. He doesn't. He used to play around and stuff and then but he would always pull that trigger. And once he had you hurt, he would swarm you and just take you out like nothing. And you know what? We kind of saw a glimpse of that in that third round, but it was too little, too late. And I think that's what I texted you that night. Too little, too late. Cormier was beating him solidly up until that point. And yes, Cormier kept taking him down, but how else is he going to fight one of the greatest stand-up fighters in the history of the sport?
Yeah, he'd be stupid if he didn't.
Yeah, and a lot of people were complaining about that. There was a lot of boos, but people, you have to be smarter about it. This is mixed martial arts. If you want to watch Muay Thai or kickboxing, go and watch that. This is mixed martial arts. This is there's wrestling involved in it too. So I was kind of bummed about the boos. I really was.
I was also let down. Well, I wasn't let down, but I thought that Anderson Silva would attack off his back. He's got some triangle wins. We all know about the one against Chael Sonnen. Gosh, I was at that fight live, and that would really poo-pooed my night when that happened. But I thought he'd be working off his back a lot more. He decided to finally just lock down the leg and stall for stand-ups. And a couple of those stand-ups were really on the I'm not sure, Jay. I don't know some of the stand-ups that were in that fight. I could have went either way. But it wasn't. I'm trying to say is it's a two-way street. It wasn't just that Cormier, was taking him down. It was Anderson Silva was holding on to him on the ground to force a stand-up.
I think some of those stand-ups were a little premature. I'm starting to see more and more of that in the UFC, and it's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. I see it a lot. Sometimes these stand-ups are just very, very questionable. So you're on the money with that. But Mike, now that Anderson Silva is lost, where does he go?
Well, I think that this fight is a wash for him. It was almost like an exhibition for him. And look, it goes on his record. It makes him now have a loss at 205. But he filled in for the fight. He took a chance. He did it for the fans. Look, he even said himself, I was just going to come to the fan convention and sign autographs. Yeah. That's what I was going to do. But, he obviously saw something that maybe he could get done there. So it's one of those fights where he lost. He lost at 205. So if he fights at 205, if he's going to make a run at 205, which I don't think he is, this would hurt him. Yeah. So I think this just you just have him now fight guys that are within the top 10 or even the top 15 and roll from there. Top 10 if you want to see if he still has it, which you and I kind of agree. He doesn't have it as much as he did.
Oh, but that said, I think he'd still do well, even at the higher end top guys. The lower end.
Top 15. Give him a guy at top 15 that he can destroy, or give him a guy in the top 10 that if you think he has a chance of defeating some of the guys at top 10.
Yeah, and as for Daniel Cormier, of course, he's already stated he's not going to wait for John Jones. He's going to be fighting people. Even if John Jones was able to fight in 6 months, he's not going to wait for him.
Yeah.
He is now the champ, and, we've discussed that, but Daniel Cormier is moving on.
Here's something we didn't discuss, though, and it has to do again with John Jones. It's not just the stupidity that he's been running wild with over the last few years, 5 years, whatever. This now even hurts the division even more. It used to be like if you defeated a kingpin who had run roughshod over a division, it opened up the division. Well, right now, we finally have the rematch, not the rematch, but the rebooking of Teixeira versus versus Anthony Johnson. And to me, I still want to see that fight, but in my opinion, really, they should take Teixeira out and have him fight Cormier. Because as much as I want to see that fight, if I don't want to see Anthony Johnson fight Daniel Cormier again. They fought 2 fights ago. But who else do you give him? Do you give Daniel Cormier, Gustafsson if he wins? Well, they just fought just a couple of fights ago too.
Yeah,
His last 2 fights have been Gustafsson and Johnson. And so the only new blood that Cormier will face is going to be Teixeira if he wins. But Jay, both you and I said, Johnson's going to win this fight. Obviously, doesn't mean he is, but you see what I'm saying? He's not going to be fighting guys he's fought already before,
well,
and
hey,
he has 2 defenses.
Well, we've seen that Anthony Johnson has actually been working on his ground game and doing well with that. So we're going to see a different Anthony Johnson in there with Cormier. Will it be enough? I don't know, but I'd still rather see that fight than Teixeira and Cormier.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to see new blood in there, but
I'm in agreement with that. I don't like these round robin fights. I don't in any division. It makes it kind of stale. But what are you going to do?
I don't know, guys out there, if you're watching Dana White looking for a fight. It's on Fight Pass, but they also show it on YouTube. He said something in one of the last episodes about they were at one of the shows to look for light heavyweights. He said, we really need light heavyweights. And this kind of shows you now exactly why they really need them.
So thanks, Jones. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to be a girl, get a sex change. Stop taking estrogen.
All right. Now
that's what I got for that fight.
Yeah, estrogen blockers. Yeah, stop taking estrogen blockers. Now on to, all right, Mike, let's get into the co-main event of the night, which was Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt. Man, a lot of people hated this fight. I didn't hate it. I thought it was exciting for what it was. It was Brock Lesnar's return. Mark Hunt is a dangerous striker that could take him out in one shot. He hit Brock with some pretty hard shots, didn't take him out, and Brock took him down over and over and delivered some brutal shots of his own on the ground, but it still wasn't enough to take out Hunt. What did you think about this fight?
Yeah, a lot of the fight was them walking around looking at each other. But look,
man, in the beginning, in the first round especially. Yeah.
And I think the first 2 rounds. But what I was going to say, though, is that when they finally would let loose, Hunt landed a couple of shots that at the press conference, you saw that, Lesnar's eye was messed up.
Yeah, it was.
And so he was taking shots for sure. He can't take a punch, that kind of thing. I guess that might be a little different because that was Mark Hunt throwing. But the thing that really came across to me was that Brock Lesnar, I say he's back because he did to a top 10 guy. And when he took Mark Hunt down, I told this, Jay, I don't know if I told this to you or if it was just to someone, Chris, who I met at the pub. And Chris, if you're listening to this, I hope you're liking it. Is that I gave Mark Hunt 2 chances to get up. The 3rd chance, the fight's over. And he was took down twice. And that 3rd time, he just got pounded on and pounded on. Brock Lesnar is back if he wants to be back. Landed some really hard shots. The bigger thing for me, though, was how fast he moves when he wants to move. When he tried to get a takedown and he couldn't get it, but then he still rolled with it. Didn't really run the pipe like people talk about, but Hunt spun around. But no, he was right there again and pushed him against the fence and took him down. So when Brock Lesnar, when he wants to get you down, he has a good chance of doing it.
Yeah, Brock Lesnar. That's one of the things that's impressive about him too. Like Cain Velasquez, he is fast, and for being an even bigger man than Cain Velasquez, it's even more impressive. He's just really, really fast. But Mike, the whole thing is, if he comes back, I don't know if he will. The way he was talking at the press conference didn't sound like that. And then when I read today how much he was paid,
oh yeah,
wow, that tells me that hey, he might not come back. He might have done that for that big payday. He was paid over $2 million for that.
Yeah, $2.5 million. But I think it was twofold. I think he knew he was going to get paid, but I really believe what he said, which he didn't like how he left left his career because of how bad he looks with that diverticulitis.
Yeah.
So this was able to have him go out on a win, look better, say, look, that was the sickness that had me lose against Overeem and had me lose against Kane. I think he would have lost against Kane anyway.
Well,
I do believe he beats Overeem, but he can now say this was me at least when I'm healthy, and he walks away. He doesn't just walk away with a win.
Yeah.
Proving that he was right. He walks away with $2.5 million.
There's a couple of issues I have with this. One, it's a slap in the face to the fighters. I don't think that he should have got paid $2.5 million to fight this fight. I understand why the UFC did it. They lost essentially the biggest fight on this card, which was Conor McGregor. They lost it. I believe that money was to go to Conor McGregor. Instead, they put it over to, they gave it to Brock Lesnar instead. I think that's what happened. I think, but still, I think that it's a slap in the face to the fighters. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, that seems like way too much money compared to. Look, I'm all about getting what you can get with your manager and your skills in the cage and stuff like that. That's not to say that sometimes guys can't make more money than when they should, but 2.5 does seem a bit out there compared to the rest of the guys making, even the bigger guys making $1 million or $1.5 million, and not to mention the guys who are making 5 and 5.
Yeah,
Exactly. 5 to show and 5 to win.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be Mr. Moneybags. I'm not, the old guy on Monopoly or anything. But I mean, like it seemed to be a little too much. And when they made this card, they didn't need Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt. It was already a fine card regardless. So it was weirded me out that they brought Brock Lesnar back. Now I know he talked about wanting to come back. So if Brock Lesnar, who makes you a lot of money, wants to come back, I guess you let him.
I don't think it was that at all. I think they wanted him on this card to bring more revenue in on the pay-per-views because they lost Conor McGregor. They needed a big draw again. Brock Lesnar is a huge draw. I know guys that watch WWE and all this, fake wrestling stuff. They watched this card, Mike, and they don't like MMA.
Right. And that's how it was when he was the champ.
And that's why they brought him back. But the thing is this just a big payday for him? And like you said, a walk-off win into the sunset.
Yeah, his demeanor at the post-fight press conference.
It kind of showed me that in his demeanor.
Yeah, it was kind of like, hey, never say never, but maybe I'll come back. Who knows? See ya. That's kind of like what it sounded like.
Yep.
And good for him for getting that done. But I will disagree with you a little bit though. I'm fairly sure that he wanted to come back, and he let them know he wanted to come back. Now I could be wrong. It could be that they asked him to come back. That's completely different.
Well, there's been rumors about it there was been rumors about it for months. Don't you remember he's been hanging around Dana White? There was rumors months ago.
Yeah.
We're talking last year. So, yeah, who knows? I don't know. But as far as that goes, we can't really talk about where he's going next or whatever, because right now he could be riding off into the sunset, like I said.
Well, I'll just go with Mark Hunt then. I think this hurt Mark Hunt. Obviously, he was in 22 in a row, but the guy still has 6 or 7 more fights now in his contract. Let's say at least 6. The guy's 42 years old, but I think if they give him 2 winnable fights, maybe with 1 this year, 1 next year. If he gets those wins, maybe he fights for a title at the end of next year, possibly. So I think he can still do it. Look, Randy Couture was fighting till about 45 or 46. I know that's a different type of an animal, Randy Couture. But look, Mark Hunt is a different kind of animal as well. So I think that Hunt, they give him a couple of easier winning fights, and he fights for the title.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's move on, Mike, to the main event, of course, Amanda Nunes versus Miesha Tate. Did you at all see it coming?
No, I didn't, and I want to bring something up. Our buddy Bert picked Nunes big.
Wow, really?
But he picked Travis Brown as well. So it really was weird to me, but he got Nunes right. So Bert, if you're listening, you got it right. Bert, I don't know why you picked Brown, but you got Nunes right.
I have to say this first. Bert, it's a wash, buddy. It's a wash because you picked one extreme and then the opposite extreme on the other side. Man, I don't know if I would have picked Nunes. It's just I picked Misha Tate, of course, on this podcast, but man, I didn't see this coming at all, especially in round one.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Look, we talked about Nunez she's the rightful number one contender. She's, got great, she's well-rounded, but her strength is stand-up, where, Misha Tate is well-rounded and her strength is wrestling. But man, whatever happened, Nunez put it on her quick and she was relentless. And then once the takedowns weren't coming, it looked like, Tate was lost. And then the punches started piling up. And I was like, man, I hope she gets through the round at least. And, she didn't get through the round. She got choked out after getting beat around for a while. It was a bad fight for Misha Tate. Rousey lost, and then Holm lost, and now Tate lost. Is Manny Nunez going to hold the belt for a couple of times?
I don't think so.
I think Pena's may beat her. I don't know. I'm not going to make that pick yet.
Well,
but hold on, Jay.
Yeah.
But no, there isn't much of a better person out there, at least, as a fighter. Amanda Nunez, it seems like an amazing person. She seems like a really, just awesome person to talk to. And I'd rather have Misha Tate have the belt. I'm a huge fan of Misha Tate, but I'm happy that Amanda Nunez is someone who at least is a great ambassador for the weight class.
And that's all you can really ask for as a champion, is people to really be ambassadors of the sport and good role models for younger folks out there. But here's the thing, Misha Tate, man, she looked as if she was fighting her first pro fight, Mike. That's how bad she looked. She looked like a deer in headlights. She had no idea, this was the big show. It didn't look like the Misha Tate we saw against Holly. Not at all.
Or any other fight that she's fought, won or lost.
It was really weird.
Yeah.
It was almost like her head wasn't in the game, and I'm not making excuses for her. That's not what I'm doing. Nunez looked phenomenal, but it was almost like she looked too phenomenal in front of Misha Tate, and Misha Tate was that deer in headlights, like, oh, man, what did I just get myself into?
I think she was really worried once the takedowns didn't work, and she was getting her hurt on the feet. And, she's got good stand-up now. We talked about how it's grown with every fight. But, Holly Holm is a fighter who's going to sit back and throw a jab, a kick, and it's not going to really take it to you until maybe it piles up.
Yep.
Nunez, she comes forward, and she's like the old Vitor Belfort, back in the day. She puts combinations together. If you're not fighting back and hurting her, she's going to continue to hurt you. And that's exactly what happened in this fight. And it was just bad for Misha Tate. I don't know where I'd like to see. I'm not sure where Misha's going to go from here. Does she fight, a rematch with Holly Holm or something like that? I'm not sure. She's out for a while, of course. But I got to go Pena now with Nunez.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And like you said, I think Pena has a real good shot at being Nunez. Nunez, though, has beat Sarah McMahon, which is arguably the best wrestler in the division. Not even arguably, she is the best wrestler in the division.
Right.
She doesn't have quite the stand-up that some other girls have in this division, but she's solid. Nunez beat her. Nunez was beat by Kat Zingano, who has good wrestling, but her stand-up is, I would say, at least as equal as Misha Tate's.
Yeah, but I think the difference for Kat Zingano here is Kat Zingano's taller and bigger.
Yeah,
and that's what she's gonna have trouble with. But she just lost to Pena, so. But I know you're talking about Nunez here. Sorry.
But I think that Kat has a chance at beating Nunez. So what I'm getting at is, I think this is going to be a division where it's going to change. That belt's going to change hands quite often. In the next 2 years, we're going to see we might see 3, 4, even 4 different champions in 2 years' time.
Yeah, I don't see anybody. For me, it was Misha Tate, but I don't see anybody that can withstand a style versus style matchup. I'll say that. So a lot of us thought that Misha Tate had a chance with Holly Holm because of the wrestling aspect. Yep. Holm had a really good shot. Always had a decent shot, at least for me, against Ronda Rousey because of her stand-up and her movement. Ronda had never faced anything like that. But I still picked Ronda to win that fight, obviously. But there was a style versus style matchup there, and that's why Holm won the fight. And so I thought she could win the fight. Now here, I just don't see that happening for anybody. It's just I don't know what's going to happen with this division.
Yeah, I think it's opened up, Mike. That's what it is. This championship belt is opened wide for it's ready for the taking by a number of these women.
Yeah,
So, it and we're going to see a lot of this in other divisions too. It's already happened, and it's going to be an amazing ride for the next year because we're going to see the changing of the guard, so to speak, or the changing of the king and queen over and
yeah,
over. It's going to happen.
yep.
But let's go ahead and move on, Mike, because we're going pretty long here. But let's go ahead and go to UFC Fight Night 90.
Yeah, we'll just make some quick points on it. Eddie Alvarez defeated Rafael dos Anjos. Nobody thought that,
Oh
except
man.
for Alvarez, his camp.
Oh, we're not going to do quick talk on this. This is pretty big news.
Okay, I was making sure because you seemed like
I had no idea this was going to happen. Wow, Eddie Alvarez, just amazing. I wanted him to win, but I didn't pick him to win.
I was there live and it was crazy pandemonium. It was just Eddie got off to a quick start. And, I don't want to say he didn't let take the foot off the gas because he did kind of feel him out a little bit. But once he landed that punch right to the face, right between Dos Anjos's his gloves, and he just swarmed, and that's what you got to do against Dos Anjos. It was just an awesome feeling. Everybody went crazy in there. I still have my voice is still messed up from it. It was such a great story. You look at Michael Bisping and his story and how he hadn't fought for the title yet, and the injuries, and so now he fights for the title. Eddie Alvarez just he lost to Cowboy, then he barely beats Melendez. Has a close fight against Pettis, but in my opinion beat Pettis outright. And then who do you give Dos Anjos? There's not really anybody left. You give him Alvarez, a former Bellator champ. And he goes in there and just wrecks shop, man.
Yeah,
it was just insane.
And I don't think anybody out there picked Eddie to win this fight. It blew my mind. Especially, it seemed that he did to Rafael what Rafael does to other people in the octagon.
Usually.
He hurts them and then swarms them and just demolishes them. And that's what Eddie did. And he shocked the world. He definitely did. Because I thought that Dos Anjos was going to reign supreme for quite some time. I thought he at least had another year.
Oh yeah, I did as well. And just to backtrack for a second, I thought if Eddie was to win this fight, it was going to have to be like in the third or the fourth. He was going to have to basically, deal with Dos Anjos in the first round, get through that. He's a tough guy. Get to the second round. He's a tough guy. He's withstood all that Dos Anjos has for him, and then maybe win a decision. By taking the final 3 rounds. But no, man, he got it done in the first. And I just want a quick story here before we move on to. I actually was watching the TUF 23 finale in the sports book in Excalibur. And I was sitting next to these 2 old guys here from Philly. And they were actually part of Eddie's, where's not entourage, but they're good friends with Eddie Alvarez's father-in-law. And so I was talking to those guys, and man, those guys were some funny guys. They were probably like in their 60s, and they had the accents going. And the stories they were telling me about Eddie Alvarez and the party they had that night before. Eddie just seems like a good dude. These guys were solid earth guys I was talking to, and Eddie always seems like a solid earth guy to me. And assuming I believe these guys, which I do, I know now for sure that Eddie Alvarez is just a great dude.
Yeah, I think most of us come away with that impression after seeing, the behind the scenes stuff with Eddie and his family and things of that nature. And Eddie seems like a good guy and a great champ for the sport. Another good ambassador.
Yes, exactly.
And the thing is, though, I wasn't expecting Dos Anjos to get caught with anything in the first round. We've seen him take hard punches from other fighters before, and he seemed to take it in stride, but Eddie just caught him. And I don't know. Mike, I think this is great, but at the same time, do we have another revolving door scenario with this belt here in this division? Well, I think it's opened it up.
here's what Dos Anjos is saying though. Dos Anjos is saying that he won 10 out of his last 11, and before this loss,
Yeah.
and that he defended the belt twice, and that he deserves a rematch. Now I disagree. I don't think he deserves a rematch. He was destroyed in the first round, and he only had 2 defenses. Now, only 2 defenses, meaning I'm talking about just to get the rematch. 2 defenses is very good, obviously, for an athlete in this career, part of their career. But I don't think he should fight again for the title unless he gets a couple of wins. Who does Eddie Alvarez fight next? I hadn't thought about it, man. There's just so much been going on and getting back and working and family and all stuff like that. Do you have a name, Jay? Have you been thinking about it?
No, I don't have a name right now because
And it's just Ferguson. I mean,
guys-
Ferguson's fighting tomorrow.
Well,
I guess it's Ferguson if he gets the win.
if Ferguson just runs through this guy he's fighting tomorrow, because this is like a late appointment opponent that they're giving him, and I looked at the guy's record. He doesn't look like a really top guy. I think he should run through him. I would say Ferguson over Dos Anjos. For sure, Ferguson.
Khabib Nurmagomedov, he got that win.
Khabib too.
He got that win over that one guy who stepped in last minute for him, which really bothered me. Like I talked on the last podcast about how he was giving Ferguson, a bunch of crap because he was fighting some last minute guy. So I don't understand that.
Yeah.
But so Nurmagomedov is there. I'd like to give him Ferguson. Obviously you and I both love Ferguson. We respect Khabib as a fighter, but he hasn't fought very much over the last few years.
Yeah.
I think you give him Ferguson.
But I'm just saying, you got those 2 guys over Dos Anjos right now. We've talked about this on the podcast before. When you're destroyed like that, like Dos Anjos was in the first round, you don't deserve the immediate rematch. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of times these fighters, they seem like that they should be guaranteed an immediate rematch if they've held the belt for a certain amount of time, and it shouldn't work that way. It should be, well, was it a decision? Was it was it close? Or did you just lose in the last few seconds of the last round? Did you get knocked out at the very end? Then it kind of makes sense. You can make a case for that. But in the first round, you get knocked out. You got knocked out in the first round, dude. You're not getting an immediate rematch.
Yeah, and he's not making money on the pay-per-view end. He's not making money for the company. So you got that aspect too. If he was a big draw, I think that might happen for him. But he's not a big draw. So look, Dos Anjos is still a good dude, and I maybe he was saying that because he was bummed that he lost, and I can cut him some slack for that. But I think it's obviously Ferguson or Khabib. Rematches though I've never heard of before this way. But Derek Lewis wants a rematch with Roy Nelson simply because he didn't knock him out.
Yeah. I saw that.
Isn't that awesome? Derek Lewis is such a card. He's so crazy. He's nuts.
Yeah. I respect a guy like that though. And he said some other colorful things too in the octagon after the fight too that we can't repeat here, or that we won't repeat. But if you guys haven't seen the post-fight interview, you got to see it. It's hilarious. But yeah, he called out Roy Nelson again. After you beat a guy, you call him out again because you didn't knock him out. That was hilarious.
I promised my fans I was going to knock him out, and I'm gonna knock him out this next time. If I didn't fight very good, I'm gonna knock him out. So I want to fight him again.
That's pretty much what he said, and it was pretty cool of him to do so. Kudos to him. But that guy, Derek Lewis, he's getting better. I think the guy he's in the mix there. I say, give him somebody like what do you say? Give him Travis Brown.
You know what? Good call. Travis Brown's coming off a loss. Well, they don't like to do losses versus winners, but they have done it in the past, so they can do it. There's exceptions to the rule. I think it's perfect because I think Travis Brown is top 10, but not top 5.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
So that makes sense.
Derek Lewis is one of those guys who's just up and coming. You know what I'm saying? He's not one of those guys that he's not top 5. He's just in the mix right now. I say you give him a guy like Travis Brown. If he runs through Travis Brown, then you give him a top 5 guy.
I think he knocks him out. I think he knocks Travis Brown out.
And that's what I'm suspecting too.
And Big Country was ranked number 10. So he beat the number 10 guy, so he's in the top 10.
So you give him Travis Brown. If he beats Travis Brown, you give him a top 5 guy. If If he beats a top 5 guy, then you got to start wondering, okay, is this guy, can we give him the title shot if he wins another fight against another top 5 guy?
Yeah, it's when he gets into guys like Josh Barnett, well, not Frank Mir, but so I'll use Josh. Josh Barnett's perfect for me because he's so well rounded, but he's still better than Roy Nelson and Gonzaga, who he's just defeated. That you get into that point, and then suddenly you're into Dos Santos and you're into Overeem and stuff like that. You've got these punchers, and I think. I'll leave it at that since we're running out of time.
Yeah. Derek Lewis is just a fun fighter to watch. I'm enjoying his fights, and I would like to see him progress. That's all I'm saying.
One last thing I want to say about the main card. Joseph Duffy, big Irish fighter. Man, I don't know how it came across on TV.
Oh, it came across very well.
Okay.
He did anyway. That guy is a force to be reckoned with.
He's a great fighter, no doubt. But the Irish, they flew in for him. Conor McGregor obviously is the main guy, but Joseph Duffy is still big because there's a lot of Irish fans there that had flown in. I sat next to a few of them, and so he moves the needle still.
Conor better have one eye open on Joseph Duffy. I'm telling you that right now.
Well, Joseph Duffy, he got beat by Poirier, but look, Poirier he's on that run. Poirier's tough. That's not a bad fight to lose. When you're coming to losing fights. So, but Joseph Duffy really came back, got that bounce back win, and he's marching up the ladder again.
Well, the thing about Joseph Duffy is that he seems more well-rounded than Conor McGregor.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying he better keep one eye open for Joseph Duffy.
Oh, Jay, you want to go ahead and move on to TUF 23 finale?
Yes, let's definitely move on.
And guys, I think we're going to go and skip the TUF winners fights due to time. We've got Will Brooks versus Ross Pearson. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about obviously Jędrzejczyk versus Gedalia. Jay, you're a huge Will Brooks fan. I respect the guy a lot.
Yep.
I think he's a great fighter. I'm a Ross Pearson fan. It was a close fight. I watched it for a second time. I had time to do that at least. What were your thoughts?
It was a close fight, but Will Brooks, coming in on short notice,
yes,
and looking as good as he did, and there were sparks. There was times where he looked amazing, like there was sparks of that, and then he kind of slowed a bit here and there. But all in all, man, being short notice, fighting a guy who's so dangerous like Ross Pearson is on his feet, Will Brooks did phenomenal.
Yeah, he did. He really, he called out Eddie Alvarez at the end, which some people are like, "Oh, he shouldn't have done that." No, man, he was the champ. Where Eddie was the champ. I think Eddie Alvarez probably beats him, but I wasn't too mad about it. I kind of laughed because that's what you do.
Yeah,
you call the best guy in the division, and a guy like he said that left the organization he was in. So he couldn't fight him. Now, I'm not saying that Alvarez was looking over his shoulder at Brooks, saying he was going to lose, but he did leave, and now Brooks is following.
And that's another thing too. Will Brooks, short notice fight. On top of that, his first fight on the big stage, the biggest stage he's ever fought in. Yeah. The UFC, and here he is fighting, and he does as good as he did. And yeah, he was right to call out Eddie Alvarez. Many of these guys, they call out other guys or, guys that are even lower ranked than them. And I don't understand it sometimes. It doesn't make no sense. Always call out the champ. Yeah. Always do that. That's the way you should do it. So I'm so happy Will Brooks won his fight because we've been calling this for a while that Will Brooks can do well in the UFC, and he's showing that.
And John Attic called it there right on the post-fight interview. He said, we're happy to finally have you.
Yep.
We want all the best people in the same place. So Will Brooks is finally here. Just really quick on Ross Pearson, though. One thing he did say that I did forget, and this is something that, shows how much that, he still, even though he lost, he made a good fight, which was he was training for James Krause originally. Mm-hmm. James Krause is a striker. Brooks is a wrestler striker. So I think Pearson did fairly good against Will Brooks. I don't think this is a wash situation like Anderson Silva was. We talked about, but I don't think Ross Pearson loses too much. Then again, Ross Pearson is not. He's not on that quest for the title. Well, excuse me, guys. I'm sure he's on the quest for a title, but he's not. He's not moving up the ladder. So I think he's going to still be in the same place on fight nights and fighting his heart out for us. So
yeah, I agree with that. One thing I do want to mention before we go on to the next fight, Mike, is I just, well, go on to the next fights we're going to really talk about. I do want to talk about one fighter or one fight in particular, Doho Choi. He's somebody to watch out for. The Korean Superboy. This guy, he's on an 8 knockout streak right now. He's been knocking people out left and right. In the UFC, though, he is on a 3 knockout streak. Yeah. He's got 3 wins in a row, and the guy knocks out his opponent, Thiago Tavares, in the first round and looked phenomenal doing it. And his walkout music, Mike, of course, the Superman theme.
Yeah, I didn't catch that on TV.
Yeah, we didn't get to catch that, but we were told that, and that's just awesome.
Yeah, and I was kind of bummed that it wasn't on TV. Yeah, and something you said, I just want to clear just a little bit, is that you said 3-0 win streak or something like that. He's actually just 3-0 in the UFC.
Yeah,
and all those knockouts. So it's not like he won a couple, lost one, and now he's like won 3 in a row with knockouts. No, he came into the UFC, started knocking guys out. And this guy is a babyface above babyfaces. This guy does not look like a fighter. This guy, it looks like, I'd be asking this guy to pass the salt in some restaurant or something and never look twice about this guy.
Yeah.
But man, just seeing what he did, his precision goes a long way. Jay got me a really great shirt of Conor McGregor having knocked out Jose Aldo, and it's precision over power. And look, this guy is not a buff guy. He's not looking like Brock Lesnar. He's not, but he's getting it done and knocking out a sound guy in Tavares.
Yep. I'm just saying, look out for this guy, guys. He looks like he's one that's going to be moving up the ladder.
Yep.
So next, of course, we'll go ahead and talk about the main event in this fight card, Mike. Joanna Jędrzejczyk against Claudia Gadelha. Mike, me and you both picked Claudia, of course. How did you feel after this fight?
After the fight was over, I said, good, Claudia won a 3-round fight. That's how I came across it, so I'd feel better about myself. But, of course, they didn't fight 3 rounds. They fought and trained for 5. Claudia was doing her Claudia thing, wasn't she, man, for the first 2 rounds. Got those rounds sound, in my opinion. Got the takedowns, was hanging on the feet. That's why I picked her. She's more well-rounded. But, man, Joanna came up near, the third round, came in the middle of the 3rd round and just really continued to pressure that she had been doing the whole fight with her punches and kicks. Yep. And she had all the gas, whereas Claudia had gas by that point, due to, obviously, the pressure by Jędrzejczyk, and finished it, out soundly and won 48-46, 48-45. 48-46, so there was a 10-8 round in there somewhere at least.
Yes, there was a 10-8 round. I forgot which one it was, but I scored it.
Because Claudia won the first 2 rounds hands down.
Yeah, there was a 10-8 round. I remember. It might have been the 4th. Yeah, it was the 4th round. I called a 10-8 round.
Yeah.
That was when she basically outstruck her. It was like, 70 punches to 3. Literally. It was insane. But here's one thing I come away with. Joanna, I will never pick against you again. Okay. Right. Until you fall from glory there. And I don't think that's coming anytime soon. I think that she is the real deal, Mike. I think that nobody's going to be able to take that belt from her in that division for quite some time, because she's so well-rounded. And even on the ground, Claudia is so much more proficient on the ground. But still, even then, she was able to guard herself not to get caught in anything, and was able to get up at times where I thought that she shouldn't have. She was a much smaller woman in that octagon, and she was able to get up at times. And I was like, whoa, okay, cool, She just showed that she's a champion.
You touched on something that to me is the big thing. We knew she was a great striker. We knew she had takedown defense. We also knew that she could get up once being taken down, but it's when Claudia was on top of her, working her game, she was able to get out of it. Because usually, she gets taken down, but after about 30 seconds, if not sooner, she works her way up. But Claudia was trying to make moves on to the back and stuff like that, that she was able to defend and get right back up. I agree. There's no one who's going to be able to defeat her. The only wrinkle in this, maybe Rose Namajunas, and I would still pick heavily on Jędrzejczyk. But I got to find someone who can give her a chance. Claudia Gadelha That was
That's
it, man. That was your Joseph Benavidez. That was your, I keep bringing them up. These people who have won,
yep.
who have fought them twice, and these fighters, John Dodson's. But maybe it wouldn't surprise me too much if somehow Rose got some sort of triangle or armbar.
I hear you.
But no, man, Jacek's going to rank for a while.
That is a great pick. Namajunas is the only one that I think in the future has a shot. But even then, I'm not picking her, Mike.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can't. Yeah. Right at this point, I can't. But Namajunas is very well rounded. She's great on the ground and great on her feet. She could pose a lot of problems to Joanna, but I still say Joanna wins hands down.
The other reason why she wins hands down is Rose has to get her to the ground in the first place.
Yeah, and
it's going to be tough for her to do that.
And the cardio, I think Joanna's cardio is unlike anything I've seen. It's insane. In the 5th round, she was bouncing on her feet
exactly.
She was ready for 2 more rounds.
Yeah.
And Claudia was flat-footed, couldn't even. She was barely walking. It was insane. It was, you know what? Joanna's the champ. She'll stay the champ for a while.
I mean, I think that we probably should start calling her Joanna Champion.
Yeah.
Obviously originally it was because nobody could say her last name. They had a hard time saying it. We learned it out of respect, obviously. But really, you may as well just call her Joanna Champion because nothing's going to change.
Before we get away from this fight, where does Claudia go?
Oh, you know what, man? I tell you what, she heals her face for right now because if you saw her face at the post-fight conference,
oh, I know
it was horrible. I know the question you're really asking is, of course, who does she fight next or what happens? And, I don't know. I really don't. I don't want them to give her Rose, but they could do that because, but she's going to fight somebody she can beat. I really believe she's the second best person in the division.
Me too.
That will defeat everybody else, even probably Rose, although that might be a better fight, really, than the fight of Rose against Joanna.
Yeah.
That fight would be fantastic. So I'm really just not even going to try and think of anything. I'm just going to let it go, unless they obviously want to give her, Paige Van Zandt if Paige wins. But I think you're just serving Paige to the,
to the wolves.
Wolves,
yeah. Yeah. I think Paige needs a lot of time. I really do. She's still young, Mike. She's got many years ahead of her in the sport if she chooses to stay in the sport, because she's becoming such a household name after Dancing with the Stars. And, let's face it, she's pretty enough to be an actress or something, right, to do other things. And who knows, she may go that route. That's what Rousey's doing. So who knows?
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, on from that, Mike, you want to talk about some fight cards coming up before we get out of here?
Yeah, there's some fight cards that'll be coming up before our next podcast, either 2 weeks from now or a little less than 2 weeks, because today is Tuesday. But we're not going to cover the ones that are out a couple of weeks. We'll cover them once we, the results, guys. We'll cover those results for sure in our next podcast. But we're just going to talk about the 2 that are this week.
We pick 'em.
Tomorrow, actually, one of the rare Wednesday cards. UFC Fight Night 91. John Lineker versus Michael McDonald is now the main event. It was Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa, guys, but remember Chiesa got hurt, so they brought in Landon Venata, who I believe is a local guy out of South Dakota, because that's where it's being fought at. Ferguson wanted to continue. He wanted to fight still, and so Landon Venata stood up. My guess is Tony Ferguson is going to get this win. The real discussion here, though, is Lineker versus McDonald. Lineker was wanting to fight Garbrandt for a long time, but I think Lineker had a weight problem or something like that. Well, now, which would have been a great fight. We got a pretty good fight here, too, though. John Lineker versus Michael McDonald. McDonald came back from from being gone for a while, a couple months ago. I forget who he beat, but he did beat someone who was outside the top 10, but he got the finish. So now we got McDonald versus Lineker. Great fight. Both guys great on the feet. I do know that McDonald, I think he's better, when it comes to grappling. But Lineker, he's very similar to Gedalia. If he smells blood in the water, watch out. Whereas McDonald is more of a methodical guy. He's going to set you up and knock you out. Jay, that's what I have to say about this. I'm going to go Lineker here. I don't want to. I'm more of a Michael McDonald fan, but I think Lineker gets it done. What do you think?
I'm going with Michael McDonald.
Yeah.
I'm going with McDonald. I think he can get this done too. It could go either way, so it's a tough one to call. It really is. But I like McDonald's chances in this fight against. He's a taller guy, bigger guy. I'm going with McDonald.
Yeah, and I think if McDonald can get it to the ground, he has a really good chance of sinking in a rear naked choke. It's just I see Lineker possibly hurting him, or not early, but hurting him enough to where he probably finishes him. Something though, we have those. I guess it's a 5-round fight, right? So it's main event.
Yeah.
I don't know. That probably helps Michael McDonald actually, because Lineker is he's got that short fuse. So you know what, man, I might change my mind on McDonald. Because it's 5 rounds, and you brought up some good points too, of course. I'm going to go decision Michael McDonald, actually.
Okay.
All 5 rounds.
All right. Coming to the dark side.
Yeah. When I get new information I forgot about, then yeah, I'll do that. Guys, the other one we'll talk about. Oh, Jay, were you done with that?
I'm done with that. Go ahead and move on.
Yeah, so there's 3 good fights that are going to be on this Friday's Bellator 158. That's the London card. So it's going to be their next international card. They're trying to do big things just like the UFC does. Main event is Paul Daly versus Douglas Lima. It was supposed to be Paul Daly versus Josh Koscheck, but guess what? Josh Koscheck has pulled out yet again.
He's
Josh
a bum.
Koscheck, please retire. That's my thought on that. But as for the fight, this is really striker versus more well-rounded guy, with Paul Daly being a knockout king, and Douglas Lima being the former welterweight champ before he lost in his last fight against Koreshkov. So I'm going Douglas Lima here by decision.
I'm going Paul Daly by knockout.
By knockout, yeah. What
Probably
what round?
second.
Yeah, not a bad pick. He's knocked out quite a guy. Matt Mitrione is now fighting Ollie Thompson, which they talked about on the last Bellator card.
Yep.
He was cleared. I don't know how he was cleared. He has bell rung really well, but he came back and won that fight. If you guys remember, well, he's fighting Ollie Thompson. I don't know much about Thompson except for he's 11-5, and as Jay and I talked about, his hype reel shows a bunch of ropes and not cages. So that will tell you kind of where he's fighting and the level of competition. So I'm going Matt Mitrione. I'm going Matt Mitrione early, probably in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
By knockout. Excuse me, I didn't say how.
Yeah, I'm hoping Matt Mitrione wins, but I'm having a hard time picking Matt Mitrione. And that's only because looking at this guy's highlights now, yes, we see ropes, but the guy's had some knockouts of his own, and he's a pretty big guy. Anything can happen, but I guess I got to go with the UFC veteran in Matt Mitrione just because, he's got a lot more experience, but it's a tough one.
Well, we can also think about, where's his head at? After being, dinged like that.
And that was only
how more susceptible is he to getting knocked down?
And that was like what, three weeks ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. It's just crazy that they cleared him to fight. Of course, they're fighting in London, so maybe they had somebody in London, clear him. I don't know.
I'm picking Matt Mitrione, but don't be surprised if he gets knocked out.
Yeah. Moving on, Michael Page is now taking on Evangelista Santos. So Santos fought Brennan Ward, and beat him. He was one of the welterweight contenders. Now he's moving on and fighting Michael Page. I don't think Santos is going to get over on Page the way he did against Ward, though I won't count him out because he is a wily veteran, and Page can sometimes, act a little crazy in there. But I still will go with Michael Page. Look, he's undefeated for a reason. His striking is phenomenal. He's a showman. I like the guy. I'm going to go with him. Probably a knockout in the 1st round. I rarely call first round knockouts, Jay, but I'm calling it.
Wow. That's impressive. I will go with a 2nd round TKO stoppage of some sort. Michael Page, of course. I don't think that this is Evangelista Santos, right? Cyborg.
Yeah.
This guy, he's going to try some leg locks, and it's not going to work on Michael Page. Michael Page is too smart for that. And Michael Page is one of those guys I want to see come over to the UFC too. But, of course, they're not going to let him go.
And please give him a title shot already when he beats this guy.
I know. We've been waiting for that. But, yeah, he's going to beat this guy. 2nd round TKO.
And you bring up the ankle locks and everything. The guy he fought in his last fight tried an ankle lock and he got knocked out for his trouble. So I don't think Santos is going to try that. Although Santos is better at it, obviously. So
He
we'll
doesn't
see
have
that.
Santos doesn't have much. He's not a strong fighter. He's not well rounded.
Right. Yeah. And he's way past his prime. Look, he's 18 and 15. He's been fighting forever. He's a journeyman and a solid journeyman, but he's a journeyman.
Yeah.
So Jay, I know we're out of time. I'll just tell just one quick story about the trip. You guys can go ahead and check on Facebook, MMA Think Tank podcast on Facebook. You'll see kind of the evolution of the trip, as well as I finally put together
Mike,
the whole.
they can also go to MMAthinktank.com and it'll take them to the Facebook page as well.
Well, that's right, exactly, yeah. And I put all the pictures up now on an album that you can click on. When I took the pictures originally, I took them with my iPhone of my wife's camera face. So anyway, so you can see them more clearly now, and you can actually see what was going on that whole time if you're interested. But I want to talk about Big Nog, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame, UFC Hall of Fame, mostly because of his being in Pride and how great he was there. But hey, the guy did get an interim championship in the UFC, so I don't have too much of a problem with him being there. But I did get to meet the guy. The story is pretty awesome. If you guys have been to the fan conventions, you have one side generally that is the performance side for tournaments such as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, wrestling, all the major disciplines that are obviously in the sport we love. And then the other side is just the main floor. It's where you meet the fighters. You get to do signatures and you shop and all that kind of stuff. Well, in between is where I met Big Nog, and there was nobody there sitting. There were seats left open still because even though there were no longer any more tournaments going, they hadn't put everything away. So kickboxing rings were up and things like that. So as I'm walking, I gotta go to the bathroom. So I'm like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And Christy's like, why don't you go over here? And I was like, no, I gotta get to the main part. So I don't want to miss anybody. I make sure if I miss somebody, I'm gonna be mad. So she does the wife things like, just go to the bathroom over there. And I was like, okay. So I start to walk towards a bathroom, and I notice about, I don't know, I'll use football terminology because that's my second favorite sport. Probably about 30 yards away, I see some guy sitting in a chair near one of the rings. He's all by himself. He's dressed very nicely, but there's something about him I can't just place. I get a little closer, and I notice it's one of the Nogs. And at this point, I don't know if it's Big Nog or if it's Little Nog. And I can't ask the guy, hey, can you take off your shirt? Because I want to see the scar on your back. They don't know which Nog you are. And so obviously I walk up to him. I stand back a little bit, maybe about 10 feet. And I just wait because he's on the phone. I don't want to be a jerk and just walk up and ask for a picture while he's trying to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
He notices me. He looks at me and kind of puts his finger up for like, just give me a minute. And I tell him, I stand there for a second, and then I say, that's okay. And I pointed to the bathroom, but he had turned. When I looked around, he wasn't looking at me, so he didn't see me point to the bathroom. And he doesn't have a lot of English anyway. Okay, so I start to walk towards the bathroom, and he turns around. And he goes, "No, you come, like that." And so I walked over there, took the picture with him, and it was great. And he went back to talking, and it was great because this guy thought that I was going to leave. That I was not, that I was going to be maybe a fan that would be saddened that I didn't get the picture. That, and I respected him as much to let him finish his
conversation,
his phone call or whatever. But he stopped the phone call because he didn't want a fan to be let down. Wow. And that was huge.
Yeah. That is huge.
And as I walked away, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. And I got a little emotional because I love meeting these guys. I didn't cry, but I got a little emotional because it was like, I got to, whether that's, God's good graces or, the right time, right person at the right time, whatever. It was just amazing that happened. So that was one of my favorite stories from the fan convention.
That's a great story. Did you ask him why he was trying to feed the carrot to the bus?
I did not. I did show him my Chael Sonnen tattoo. I had to pull my shorts up to show him that.
It's you know what, and that's one of the things, Mike, when we've gone to the fights together before, when we meet these fighters, they're they're people that, they're just people. They're regular people. They're not above you. Most of these guys don't look down upon you. Matter of fact, I have not met one that looked down upon me.
Yeah, they're happy. They're happy for the love that we show them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're happy for it.
Yeah. I met Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz was a great guy. There was, he was not an a-hole or what people think he is. The guy was a good guy, man. He was there to meet the fans, and he was great about it.
Jay, speaking of not a good guy, Cyborg stood us up. Cyborg, Chris Cyborg Justino, one of the greatest women's mixed martial artists in all the world. We waited in line for 2 hours. She stood everybody up, so I wasn't very happy about that. So that was a sad story. But I do want to just make sure I get this out. You might be thinking to yourself, Mike, you didn't pay it off. How did you know it was Big Nog? Well, we waited for the induction ceremony, and we saw that Lil Nog came out, and he had something different on. Then when Big Nog came out to receive his award, he wasn't in. He was wearing what the guy that we took the picture with was wearing.
Oh, okay,
So.
that's great. That's great, and he does deserve to be in that Hall of Fame. Definitely.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that great story, Mike, and I know you have others too, but unfortunately, we're low on time here, so let's go ahead and just let people know they can go to the Facebook again, or just go to MMAthinktank.com, and it'll take them to the Facebook site. Mike's got the great articles he puts up all the time, a lot of stuff there. Now he's got a bunch of new pictures there as well. Ton of pictures on that website, Mike. Ton of pictures. And
I'm going to try and get back over the next couple of days back into the normal stretch of, writing about, all the news that happens and the fight weeks and all that kind of stuff like that. So obviously this last few, 6 or 7 days has been different, guys. So if you guys are new to listening to us and new to the Facebook, it will get back to where it's more not about me and my whole thing with the the fight week, the International Fight Week. It's going to be all about the sport we love and what's coming down the pipe and all that stuff.
Yeah, and also, guys, you can reach us at 925-237-1296. Reach us, call us, leave a message. Let us know how you think we're doing, or if you want to talk about anything we've talked about on the show or that we haven't talked about concerning mixed martial arts, let us know, or email us at mmathinktank@gmail.com. Anything else, Mike?
No, that's pretty much it. Just, go to the Facebook, and if anything happens, that we need to talk about, we can't talk about it for a couple of weeks, so it'll be on Facebook and Twitter.
Definitely. So. All right, guys. Well, until next time.
Have a good one.
We go.